Today marks the 30th anniversary of World AIDS Day. This year's theme is increasing impact through transparency, accountability and partnerships. It's estimated that nearly 37 million people worldwide are living with HIV, and the AIDS epidemic claims an estimated 2 million lives each year. December the 1st was the first designated as World AIDS Day in 1988 to raise awareness about the pandemic and remember those who have died of the virus. Well, let's get you more now on HIV in Africa, the successes and the challenges. I'm joined live in the studio by Professor Sylvia Oju. She's an HIV/AIDS expert and the country director for Kenya programs at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. Thank you very much for coming in and joining us.
Thank you.
It's World AIDS Day, as we've just been saying. How are we doing as a continent when it comes to reducing the infection here?
So World AIDS Day provides us that opportunity to always look back at what you've said, the tremendous losses of the first 2 decades. And now, in the latter 14 years or so, the tremendous gains that are being made, particularly the impact of treatment. So in Africa, starting with mortality, we've seen a dramatic drop in mortality between 2005 and 2016 of about 62% in Eastern Southern Africa. With regard to new infections, that has also dropped quite significantly, about 30% in Eastern Central Africa and about 10% in West Africa. So those are significant gains. The drop in incidence or new infections is largely driven by drops in mother-to-child transmission of HIV, so new pediatric HIV. But we're certainly beginning to see the impact on adult HIV infection as well.
So we're seeing some good news there with these reductions. There have been several breakthroughs in combating the virus. How are you encouraged by this?
It's difficult to be in this field and not be encouraged, especially if you look back from where we started in the 80s and early 90s. So certainly looking at what we currently have in terms of interventions, both for treatment and prevention, I'm greatly encouraged. The institution of treatment and as prevention, which was started in 2015 by WHO and adopted by many countries in 2016, we've actually seen about 2/3 of those who need treatment actually starting treatment in much of the African continent. So treatment coverage has increased tremendously.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that particular type of treatment?
Well, that means that everybody who is diagnosed is provided with treatment more or less immediately. We are moving away from delaying treatment initiation to starting treatment immediately. And when that happens, the majority of patients who are diagnosed actually do get to start treatment rather than to be lost to follow up, which used to happen when we delayed initiation of treatment.
But, oh, sorry, continue.
Yeah, I was going to say that the other evolution in treatment is the tolerability of drugs that we currently use. The drugs that we use are not toxic. They're easy to take. It's often a single pill a day. And because of that, patients are able to stay on the treatment for long periods of time. And because they don't develop toxicities, they don't have to change their treatment, which makes treatment much more successful.
And they're accessible by most people.
And now, yes, within programs, because of the global concerted effort of making funding available within Africa, most countries will have access for free treatment for their population.
But I'm sure you'll agree much more needs to be done in terms of policy and funding. How important is it, do you think, it is that the momentum is not lost in the treatment of HIV/AIDS?
Yeah, it's very critical at this point when funding for HIV infection had been required for now decades. And I think people who have been responsible for much of the funding may actually begin to wonder how long this is going to go on. Further, the countries that receive the funds probably have not stepped up in terms of being contributors to their own needs as much as they should have. So the issue of funding is critical. I think the other issues relate to the health systems. Health systems in Africa still remain fragile. And because of that, again, the burden that it places on those countries to develop that and provide effective treatment still remains. But others also relate to the fact of long-term treatment. Long-term treatment is difficult for many people, whether it's a single pill a day, it's still something that patients find onerous. So interventions and innovations around HIV treatment will still be needed, particularly with regard to HIV prevention, will still be needed if you're to be successful in fully containing the epidemic.
Okay, thank you very much for all of that. Thank you. That was Professor Sylvia Ojo giving us her thoughts on World AIDS Day. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.